When my son looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're too old to travel," something in me snapped, but I didn't show it. I didn't beg, didn't argue, didn't flinch. I just smiled. And 3 weeks later, I sent him a photo, a business class boarding pass, direct flight, Paris, my name on it. No caption, no explanation. Just proof that the woman he thought was too weak, too slow, too irrelevant, was halfway across the world, living the dream she'd buried for decades, to raise him. He replaced me with his wife's parents, took them to the city I'd saved for, said I'd slow them down. So I booked my own ticket, on my own terms, with my own money, because I didn't raise a son to be ungrateful, but I sure as hell became the kind of mother who teaches grown men what loss feels like. He thought the story was over, but the real journey, my journey, had just begun. Before we continue, hit subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from, because what I did next left him speechless in the middle of Paris. My husband died on a Tuesday morning. It was quiet, no sirens, no drama, just a breath that didn't come back. He was 39, I was 34, and my son, he was 6. Too young to understand grief, but old enough to feel the cold space beside him in bed that night. We buried him with a second-hand suit and a borrowed prayer. And when everyone left, I sat alone on the kitchen floor, holding my husband's empty coffee cup, still warm, still stained with cinnamon. He always loved cinnamon. That night, with my knees pulled to my chest, and my boy asleep in the other room, I made a silent vow. I will not let him fall. I will give him everything, even if it breaks me. I sold my wedding ring the next morning, pawned the only gold I had to my name for $83, used it to buy groceries, school shoes, and gas, and started job hunting. No resume, no experience, just desperation, and a backbone forged from grief. I cleaned houses during the day, million-dollar homes with marble counters and wine cellars, homes that smelled like lavender and money, and at night, I babysat for other mothers, wealthier ones, who called me dependable, but never learned my name. I scrubbed other people's floors, folded their linens, rocked their babies, while my own child waited for bedtime stories I was too tired to read. Still, I smiled, every single day, because he was watching me, and I was raising a man. I taught him to say thank you, to look people in the eye, to never talk down to anyone, no matter their job. I clipped coupons, so he could go on field trips. I skipped dinner, so he could have extra meat in his lunchbox. I sewed his uniforms by hand. When he outgrew his shoes, I pretended mine weren't falling apart. Every dollar I saved went to his future. Every minute I rested felt like stealing time from his tomorrow. I remember once, he got invited to a soccer camp, the kind the rich kids went to. The cost was more than my rent, but he looked at me with those wide eyes and said, "It's okay, Mama, maybe next year." That night, I cleaned 3 extra houses and begged the camp coordinator to let me pay in installments. He went, and I cried behind the laundry room door when I saw his name on the jersey. It was the first time I saw him run towards something he loved, without looking back to check if I was okay. He got straight A's in school, earned scholarships, won medals and trophies that I displayed proudly on a chipped shelf in our tiny apartment. But the one thing I kept closest was a photo. A simple grainy picture of his feet, black dress shoes, white stage. He was accepting an award at his private school graduation. I couldn't afford the professional photo package, so I snapped it from the last row with my old flip phone. The image was blurry, but to me, it was perfect. That photo lived on my fridge for over 20 years, taped at the corners, faded by the Florida sun, but untouched, sacred. It reminded me of every lunch I skipped, every sleepless night, every silent prayer, whispered over a cracked steering wheel. When he got accepted to college overseas, I nearly dropped the phone. It felt like I'd made it, like we made it. He hugged me that day and said, "You did it, Mum." But what he didn't know was that the hardest part was just beginning. He moved to London with a suitcase full of dreams and a heart full of excitement. I stayed behind, proud, anxious, broke. Calls were frequent at first. He'd tell me about lectures, new friends, cold weather. He sent me photos, cobblestone streets, warm pastries, bookstores, then slowly, they stopped. First, it was the missed calls, then short replies, then weeks of silence. The next time I heard from him, it was because his rent was overdue. He said, "It's just temporary, Mum. I'll pay you back." I wired the money that same night, didn't even check my balance. A month later, it was a bank error, then a lost wallet, then emergency dental work. I always sent it, because love doesn't keep receipts. I figured once he settled in, he'd come back, even if just for a visit. But months became years, and the boy I raised began to sound like a man I didn't recognize. He started correcting my grammar, telling me not to overshare. When I asked about his work, he said things like, "That's not how people do things in Europe." He moved in with a woman, then married her. I wasn't invited. He told me it was a small ceremony, no guests. Later I saw the photos on social media. Her parents were there, her family, even their dog, but not me. Still, I kept that fridge photo, his shoes, that stage, that moment when I believed I'd done enough to deserve his love forever. What I didn't realize was that I'd built him wings, but he was using them to fly away from me. And every time I asked, "When are you coming home?" he'd say, "Soon." Then, "Maybe next year." Then, "There's nothing for me there, Mum." That's when it hit me. I had become his past, a relic, an obligation, an accent he was trying to erase. I stopped calling, stopped asking, stopped hoping, but I never stopped remembering, and I never stopped loving him. What changed was that I finally started loving myself more, and when he finally said those 7 words, "You're too old to travel, Mum," he didn't just reject a vacation, he confirmed the truth I'd been avoiding for years. I had raised a man who no longer saw me. I was 73, the day I asked him, not for money, not for help, just for a seat beside him, on a trip I thought we'd dreamed about together. He'd mentioned it casually on a call. "Yeah, we're going to Europe next month, Paris, Milan, then down to the coast." I felt something tighten in my chest, not pain, just pressure. I'd waited a long time to hear those words. Paris. He knew it was my dream. He used to tease me as a boy, saying, "One day, I'll take you, Mum, first class, croissants, and everything." So I asked, "Can I come?" Not with pride, not with expectation, just a quiet, hopeful question from a mother who had given up most of her life to raise him. He laughed, a short, sharp laugh, like I'd just suggested something ridiculous. There was no warmth in it, no pause. "You, Mum, come on, that's not really the vibe." Then he chuckled again, softer. "I mean, it's a lot of walking, late nights. You wouldn't enjoy it. Plus, we kinda already planned everything." I didn't say anything. He continued, casual as ever. "But hey, if you could watch the dog while we're gone, that'd actually help us out a ton." Just like that. The woman who'd once fed him with her last dollar was now his backup pet sitter. I held the phone for a moment, felt the plastic press into my ear, like it was mocking me. I swallowed once, then said, "Of course," because I knew if I said anything else, my voice would crack. He moved on, talking about restaurants he wanted to try, hotels he'd booked, how his wife's parents were really excited. I froze. Her parents. I hadn't heard him mention them before, but now, he said it like it was nothing, like it was obvious. "Yeah, we invited her mom and dad. They've never been to Europe either, so it'll be fun." That's when my heart stopped listening. I heard the rest like muffled noise underwater, because I finally understood. He didn't just exclude me, he replaced me with people who didn't raise him, didn't break their backs to build his world, didn't sacrifice holidays, dinners, youth, dignity, and still got the seat that was meant for me. After we hung up, I sat at the edge of my bed in silence. No tears, no shaking, just stillness. The kind of stillness that only comes when something inside you finally gives up, or wakes up. I stood slowly, walked to the back closet, pulled down an old cookie tin, with a faded Eiffel Tower on the lid. Inside it were coins, euros, collected over the years, one by one, from clients who'd traveled, friends who returned, even a bartender, who tipped me in foreign change and said, "It's just pocket money." But to me, it was Paris. For years, I kept adding to that jar. A euro here, two there. Not enough to book anything, but enough to remind myself that I still had dreams. I held one of the coins in my palm. It felt colder than I remembered, heavier, not because of the metal, but because of what it now represented. I walked back into the kitchen, where the fridge still held his faded graduation photo, his feet in polished shoes. The moment I thought I'd given him the world, I stared at it for a long time. Then I pulled a chair to the counter, took down the photo, and tucked it in the drawer beneath the sink. I wasn't throwing it away, but it didn't belong on display anymore. The next morning, I opened the suitcase I hadn't touched in 20 years, the one I kept for someday. Its zipper stuck halfway, so I used a butter knife to pry it open. Inside were old travel brochures, yellowed with time, a Paris street map, a list of French phrases I once tried to memorize. Où est la gare? Combien ça coûte? I ran my fingers across the page, then looked up. I wasn't packing to beg. I wasn't planning to ask again. I was done waiting for someone else to give me permission. I started writing lists. What I'd need, what I'd leave behind. Comfortable shoes, passport, nothing fancy. I hadn't flown in over 2 decades, but I knew how to book a ticket. What I didn't know was how good it would feel to finally choose myself. I didn't tell anyone, not my neighbors, not the church ladies, not even my son. Let him believe I was at home feeding his dog. Let him assume I was watching his house, grateful for the favor. Because what I was actually doing was finally stepping into a life I'd put on hold for far too long. He gave his wife's parents Paris, but he gave me something greater, a clean break. And that was all I needed, because the woman I had been, the one who waited by the phone, who lived off scraps of attention, who settled for crumbs, she was gone. What rose in her place was someone far more dangerous, a mother who had nothing left to lose, and a full suitcase. I didn't cry, not after the call, not when I saw the photos online. My son grinning in front of the Eiffel Tower, his wife's parents standing proudly beside him, arm in arm. I didn't scream, didn't call to demand why, didn't ask what made me unworthy. I just started planning, not with rage, but with precision. Because when a mother gives her life to raise a man, and he erases her like a stain, that kind of silence becomes dangerous. I opened the drawer beneath my bed, the one with the velvet pouch. Inside it was my mother's necklace, the only heirloom I had, a gold pendant, nothing extravagant, but real, heavy, pure. I held it in my hand for a long time, felt the weight of all the women who'd worn it, and the weight of what I was about to do. Then I drove to the pawn shop, no hesitation. The man behind the glass examined it, eyebrows lifted. "This is solid," he said. I nodded once. "It's time it does something solid." I took the cash, didn't look back. That night I opened my little lockbox, the one I kept taped under the kitchen sink. Inside were bank slips, savings bonds, birthday cash folded inside church envelopes, 17 years of maybe one day. I added it all up, and I had just enough, not for luxury, but for a beginning. I searched online, senior group tours, safe neighborhoods, hotels near the city center, with elevators and English-speaking staff. I booked it all in silence. No one knew, not my sister in Tallahassee, not my church group, not even the dog groomer, who usually pried everything out of me. I chose Paris, not just because it was my dream, but because it was his location. He had taken them there, so I would walk the same streets, on my own terms. I picked the same week, same arrival date, different flight, different hotel, different world. Then I began sorting through the past, not memories, receipts. I pulled out every folder from the hallway closet, school fees, soccer uniforms, dentist bills, college tuition payments, the travel agent receipt from when I paid for his honeymoon, because he said, "We'll pay you back when we settle in." They never did. Each paper was a scar, each number, a piece of myself I'd given away. I organized them into a binder, plastic sleeves, labels, chronological, no emotion, just proof. Because when the moment came, I wanted him to see the cost of everything he had forgotten. 3 days before my flight, I went to the travel clinic. They said I needed updated vaccines, and I sat quietly, listening to the hum of fluorescent lights above. Beside me, a young couple flipped through a travel brochure. She giggled and whispered, not very quietly, "Can you imagine your grandma trying to backpack across Europe?" He laughed. She'd be lost before she cleared customs.
They looked at me. I looked back, and I smiled. Not the kind of smile that says I forgive you, the kind that says, watch me. I got my shots, took my vitamin packet, and went straight to the travel agency to confirm the rest. The woman at the desk, maybe late 30s, glossy nails, thick lashes, looked up from my file. Are you going alone? She asked, just a little surprised. I nodded, yes. She hesitated, then tilted her head. You're brave. I paused. Then I said something I hadn't said in decades. I'm not brave. I'm just finally alive. Her smile softened, and for a second, I saw the girl I used to be. The one who clipped French words from magazines and practiced them in front of a mirror. That night, I came home and made tea, sat at the table with the old framed family vacation photo, the one from that trip to Disney, when he was 10. We were all smiles then. He had his arm around my shoulders. I looked younger, hopeful. I studied it. Then I picked up a match, lit the corner, held it over the kitchen sink. The fire crackled softly, curling the edges. His smile dissolved first, then mine, then the rest. When it was gone, I ran cold water to wash the ashes down the drain. It didn't hurt. It felt clean. 3 days before departure, I packed my bag. Not a big suitcase, just one small roller, 2 pairs of shoes, loose dresses, scarf, toiletries, journal, and the binder. Every receipt, every transfer, every unpaid debt of love. I printed my hotel confirmation. Then I found a blank envelope. No note, no explanation, just the printout, the address, the dates. I slid it in, sealed it, wrote his name on the front. No return address, just enough for him to understand I wasn't where he left me. I mailed it from the post office the next morning. Then I sat on the bus stop bench and watched it disappear in the mail bin. The sun was hot, the pavement shimmering, but inside, I felt colder, more focused than I had in years. I wasn't seeking revenge in fire and fury. I was building something quieter, sharper, something that would land like glass in the softest part of his pride. He thought he'd buried me under guilt, under silence, under usefulness, but I was never gone. I was just waiting. Now the countdown had started, because while he was sipping wine in Montmartre, laughing with people who called me just the mum, I was already on my way. Same country, same air, different mission, and he wouldn't see it coming. Paris welcomed me like an old secret. The air was colder than I expected. Not bitter, just sharp enough to remind me I was alive. I stepped out of the airport in a plain black coat and quiet shoes. No one waited for me with signs or hugs. And somehow, that made it feel even better, because no one could take this from me.
No return address, just enough for him to understand. I wasn't where he left me. I mailed it from the post office the next morning. Then I sat on the bus stop bench and watched it disappear in the mail bin. The sun was hot, the pavement shimmering, but inside, I felt colder, more focused than I had in years. I wasn't seeking revenge in fire and fury. I was building something quieter, sharper, something that would land like glass in the softest part of his pride. He thought he'd buried me under guilt, under silence, under usefulness, but I was never gone. I was just waiting. Now the countdown had started, because while he was sipping wine in Montmartre, laughing with people who called me just the mum, I was already on my way. Same country, same air, different mission, and he wouldn't see it coming. Paris welcomed me like an old secret. The air was colder than I expected, not bitter, just sharp enough to remind me I was alive. I stepped out of the airport in a plain black coat and quiet shoes. No one waited for me with signs or hugs, and somehow that made it feel even better, because no one could take this from me. I checked into a small boutique hotel, off Rue des Martyrs, the kind with creaky elevators and velvet wallpaper that smelled faintly of dust and roses. The man at the front desk offered to carry my bag. I told him I had it. I always had it. My room was simple, twin bed, tiny window, but when I opened the curtain, I could see the tip of Sacré-Cœur glowing in the distance. That night, I didn't unpack. I just sat by the window with the binder in my lap. Pages of receipts, dates, proof. I wasn't sure if I'd confront him. I wasn't here for a scene. I was here to breathe, to prove, to myself more than anyone, that I was never the problem, just the forgotten solution. In the morning, I walked the cobblestone streets alone. No map, no agenda. Just instinct and years of watching travel shows with the sound too low. The streets buzzed with life, mopeds zipping by, children laughing in schoolyards, pigeons flapping in crowded squares. I moved slowly, not because I was old, but because I wanted to feel every step. I ate pain au chocolate on a bench by the Salery, listened to street musicians playing jazz beneath Pont Neuf, took photos with an old disposable camera I bought from a corner shop. I left my phone in the hotel, let the noise of the outside world fade. That first day, I walked for 5 hours, past markets and churches, and bookstores and bakeries. My legs ached, my feet blistered, but my chest felt lighter than it had in years. I stopped at a gallery that didn't charge seniors, stared at a painting of a woman sitting alone in a blue kitchen. Something about her posture, upright, still, made me cry without sound. The next evening, I found the cafe, the one my son had posted about on his social media. Same green awning, same little lanterns, same view of the fountain. I sat at a corner table, alone, ordered exactly what he had. Duck confit, red wine, lemon tart. The waiter asked if I was waiting for someone. I said, no, I'm honoring someone. The table beside me was loud, a family of 4 speaking Italian, gesturing with their hands. It made me smile, because for once, I didn't feel like I was missing out. I wasn't invisible. I was just here. I ate slowly, wrote a postcard to myself, one I'd mail before I left. At the end of the meal, I left a €50 note, and a smaller one beneath it, with my son's name written across the corner. The tip was generous, deliberately so. I wanted him to be remembered, for something he didn't actually do. That night, I returned to my room and listened to the Eiffel Tower bells chime 11 times, and as they echoed through the walls, I heard his voice again. You're not built for travel, Mum. The words had haunted me for weeks, but now, with my window open to the Paris wind, they felt ridiculous. Because I wasn't just built for it. I was thriving in it. 3 days passed before I checked my phone. 12 missed calls. 7 texts. Where are you? Did something happen? Are you at home? Mum, seriously, answer me. Is this a joke? Why did I get a hotel booking from you? Call me back, now. I didn't reply. I let the silence speak. Another day passed, then another, and then another. By the 5th morning, I received a message that was different. No anger, no sarcasm, just one line. I'm sorry, please just tell me if you're safe. I stared at the screen, then I turned off the phone again. Because I was safe. I just wasn't his safety net anymore. That afternoon, I walked to a post office near Montparnasse, bought a padded envelope, printed a photo at a nearby kiosk. My return ticket, first class, non-stop. Departure, Paris. Arrival, home. I signed the back with a date. No note, no emotion, just evidence. Then I sealed it, and mailed it to his office address. Let him open it at work. Let him wonder. Let him feel what I'd felt for years. Excluded, confused, unimportant. I spent the rest of the week visiting bookstores, riding the metro, sitting in quiet churches, lighting candles for women like me, the ones who gave too much and asked for too little. Every night, I made tea in the lobby, wrote in my journal, and breathed without apologizing for it. But on my last day, something shifted. I was walking near Place Vendôme, looking at the jewelry displays I couldn't afford but admired anyway, and then, I saw him. Across the street, grey coat, leather shoes, sunglasses. It was him, my son. I stopped. My breath caught in my throat, not from fear, but from power, because he looked lost. He scanned the street, like he didn't know what he was even looking for, panic in his eyes, phone clenched in his hand, and in that moment, I could have walked right up, said his name, made a scene, but I didn't. I stepped back into a side alley, watched him disappear into the crowd. No confrontation, no explanation, just distance. Because revenge doesn't always need a witness. Sometimes the punishment is realizing too late That the person you took for granted no longer waits for you, and sometimes, that's enough. But what came next wasn't silence, it was reckoning. The Eiffel Tower stood tall behind me, cold metal against a soft blue sky. The plaza below buzzed with tourists, cameras, laughter. The smell of roasted chestnuts from a street vendor drifted through the air. I had just finished a coffee, alone, at a bench near the carousel. Children screamed with joy as painted horses circled in slow motion, and then I heard it. My name, spoken not with love, but with urgency, control, panic. Mom, I turned. He was walking toward me, fast, flustered. His coat flapped behind him, his phone still in his hand. His eyes scanned me like I was a stranger, like he couldn't decide whether to hug me or scold me. You can't just disappear like that, he hissed under his breath. I didn't move, didn't stand, didn't speak. He kept going. Do you have any idea how this looks? You're in Paris, alone, unannounced. What are people going to think? That was the moment I realized something important. He wasn't worried about me, he was worried about himself. I finally stood. The carousel spun behind him, lights flickering. A couple nearby looked over curiously. He lowered his voice but sharpened his words. You embarrassed me. You sent hotel reservations, first-class tickets. What are you trying to prove? I looked him in the eye, calm, cold, ready. I didn't come here to prove anything. I came here to live. He scoffed, running a hand through his hair. Why now? Why like this? I reached into my purse, pulled out a small weathered notebook, leather-bound, frayed at the edges. He looked confused, annoyed, like I was wasting his time. I held it out. He didn't take it, so I opened it myself. Inside were plastic sleeves, neatly labeled, dates, copies, receipts, check stubs, wire transfers, his entire childhood, one transaction at a time. I flipped slowly. First passport, $116. Page turned, college application fees, $312. Next page, textbooks, rent top-ups, emergency dental, suit for your first internship. His eyes narrowed. Why are you showing me this? I didn't blink. Because you forgot. Around us people had started to notice. A few tourists slowed their walk. A woman with a phone paused nearby. I kept going. Here's the honeymoon deposit, the down payment on your first car, the last-minute wire transfer you said you'd return in 2 weeks. I closed the book. It's not about the money, it's about the weight. He looked down, then up again, defensive now. I never asked you to do all that. I smiled, not cruelly, just clean. No, you never had to. For a moment the wind picked up, blew his scarf over his shoulder. He looked smaller than I remembered, and far more afraid. I stepped closer, lowered my voice just enough to slice. You chose pride over your mother. I chose Paris. He opened his mouth, maybe to defend, maybe to justify, but I wasn't done. I gave you 30 years, my body, my time, my voice. I tapped the book once. This is the cost of your freedom. The crowd around us wasn't large, but it was enough. People began to murmur. One woman whispered, "Good for her." Another man, filming discreetly, shook his head with pity. My son's jaw tensed. You made this public. I looked around. The Eiffel Tower gleamed. The Eiffel Tower gleamed. The carousel spun. Children laughed. No, you made it public, the day you posted them in Paris, and left me out. His cheeks flushed, not from shame, but from exposure. I came to heal, I said softly, not to beg. He looked like he wanted to stop the moment. Undo it, erase it, control it, but he couldn't, because I was no longer his secret. I handed him the notebook. He took it, reluctantly, like it burned in his hands. Then I turned, took one step, then two. Mum, wait, he called out. I didn't, because if I turned around now, I might break. And this wasn't a moment for breaking. It was a moment for release. I kept walking. The air was cool, the sound of heels on cobblestone, a breeze tugging at my coat. He called again. Don't walk away from me like this. But I already had. Long before Paris, long before the flight, I had walked away the moment I realized I was never truly invited. I paused at the corner of the plaza, looked back, once,
He stood in the same spot, notebook clutched to his chest, eyes darting between me and the people still watching, the camera phones, the stares, the silence. He had always been good at controlling rooms, conversations, narratives, but not this time. This time, the story wasn't his to spin. This time, the spotlight was mine. And what I'd just done wasn't revenge, it was reckoning. But the part that was coming next, that was something even he couldn't prepare for. Florida was warm when I returned, not just the weather. The air itself felt slower, like it had nothing left to prove. The wheels of my suitcase clicked softly across the pavement outside my apartment. Same place, same mailbox, same porch light that flickered if you didn't screw the bulb in tight. But I wasn't the same. I walked in and left the suitcase by the door. I didn't unpack right away. I just stood there, letting the stillness press against me. It didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. I boiled water, made tea, sat at the same kitchen table I'd cried at 100 times before. And this time, I smiled. On the counter sat the old jar, the one that used to say Paris in crooked black marker, now smudged by time. I peeled off the old label, cut a new piece of masking tape, wrote 3 words, slow and steady, Florence, 2026. I dropped a €5 coin inside. It made a soft clink, a beginning sound. In the following weeks, I did something I never thought I would. I started inviting women like me into my home, widows, retired nurses, church friends who'd raised 3 kids, and been left behind by all of them. We sat on fold-out chairs, sipping coffee, and flipping through travel guides. Some had never even left Florida, others had stories buried under shame. But all of us wanted one thing: to stop waiting for someone else to make us feel seen. So I started a travel circle. Solo Sisters, we called it. We met every Saturday, shared tips, practiced languages, compared flight apps, planned things we might never do, and things we now believed we could. One woman cried just talking about renewing her passport. Another brought old photos of a train ride she took in her 20s. We all clapped for her. And me, I told them about Paris. Not the museums or the wine, but the feeling of being in a place where no one knew my name. And yet I belonged anyway. I framed the boarding pass, hung it near the fridge, right above where the old photo of his graduation used to be. I never put that photo back up, not out of bitterness, out of clarity, because sometimes you have to make space for what comes next. The emails started about a week after I returned. First one, then another. Subject lines like "I'm sorry I didn't understand. Can we talk?" I didn't open them, not because I was angry, but because I was full of something I hadn't had in years, myself. Then came the letter, real paper, stamped, handwritten return address. I opened it at the dining table, alone, no audience, no cameras. It was short. "Mom, I don't know what happened to us. Maybe I was blind. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I just thought you'd always be there. But watching you walk away in Paris, it did something to me. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just hope one day you'll let me try again. I miss your voice. Love, your son." I read it once, then again, then folded it, placed it in the back of my recipe book, and closed the cover. Because forgiveness isn't a door someone knocks on. It's a window that opens when the air inside feels safe again. And I wasn't there yet, but I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Because I had found something in Paris that he couldn't give me, and couldn't take from me. My voice. He had taken it in small ways. Dismissive glances, short calls, invisible boundaries that grew wider each year. But I'd found it again. On a cobblestone street, in a cafe, where no one waited for me, under a sky that didn't ask who I was. And now, I could speak without raising my voice. I could leave without slamming the door. I could be quiet, and still be heard. That was my peace. Not in revenge, not in shame, but in wholeness. Now when I open that jar and drop in another coin, I don't do it in secret. I do it in front of the women who cheer. I do it knowing that I may be 74, but I'm not done dreaming. Florence is waiting. Maybe Greece after that. And if no one claps when the plane lands, if no one snaps a photo of me on a hillside in Tuscany, I'll still smile, because I'll know I wasn't too old. I wasn't too much. I wasn't a bird. I was just early to my own rebirth, and whatever comes next will come on my terms. Because when you stop begging to be included, you finally realize how powerful it is to walk alone. Love doesn't control, it invites. Real love doesn't shame you for aging, for dreaming, for finally choosing yourself. If you've ever been told you're too old, too slow, too sensitive, too much, I want you to know, you are exactly enough. You deserve more than silence. You deserve more than crumbs. You deserve a life that claps for you, even if you're clapping alone.